Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Matt Poyle with NEO LaunchNet. Thank you to Lisa Mackin for doing the moderating tonight. And thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of their busy season to be here. Without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Hello, everybody, and welcome tonight. We'd like to welcome you to this Febe evening event, which is going to be focusing on best practices learned from agricultural entrepreneurs. And we would like to give a big thank you to all of our panelists today because this is the busiest time of year for them. And even though we finally have rain, I know that they probably would like to be out in their gardens as opposed to here in a closed-in building. So I'd like to introduce to you tonight Jim and Judy Dostal of Dostal Farms. And then we have Mr. Bob Mattis of Mattis Winery, then Dr. Chester Bowling of Buckeye Harvest, and then we have Nathan Jopak of Fairview Meadow Farm, and last but not least, we have Brian Turner of Our Little World Alpacas. So I'm going to turn the microphone over, and basically I'd like to ask all of you the general question of how did you get started? What made you go into farming for your entrepreneurial business? And also, what previous industry did you already have? I know that you all have such diverse farms, even though we call it agriculture. Some of you do deal with cattle, some of you deal with organic produce, some of you have organic produce, alpacas. You're also diverse in what you do. So even though we say agriculture is such a big umbrella, so if you don't mind, if we could just go down the line, if you could tell us how you got started and what you've learned in the time that you've been in business.
You want to do it? You want me to go? Good evening. Jim Dostal, again from Dostal Farms. I worked at Invacare for 24 years. And lost my job there a while back. Previous to that, when we got married, we started having kids, and we were concerned about what our kids would be eating. So my family, my mom's side of the family from Pennsylvania, always had really big farms, like 1,000-acre farms, lots of cattle, lots of corn, and all that kind of stuff. So I was always intrigued by farming. Well, then as we started having kids, we were kind of going, okay, what are they eating? Where's this food coming from? So that kind of spurred our interest, and I started working with a friend of mine and buying beef from him. And he just said one day, he goes, why don't you put a barn up and put some cows in it and raise your own food? So I said, okay, let's do it. And that was the start of it. So ever since then, it's kind of blossomed into now we sell beef, pork, poultry, brown eggs, honey, maple syrup, and lamb. So we have a little bit of everything, and we've been doing it since on and off part-time since probably 1999. So.
Where are you located?
We are on Route 20 out in Camden Township. Oberlin mailing address. It's out there by the big greenhouse. So.
Actually, they have their own names.
Me?
Oh, okay.
Did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, I'm from Lorain, so when he said, we're going to raise cattle, and I said, we're going to do what? Because I didn't know the first thing about any of this, trust me when I tell you. So when I say, if you're not sure what you want to get into and we can teach you, Matt, we can teach you because I had to learn everything right from scratch. Inner city, very diverse high school, clueless. So that's been my experience with the whole thing, but enjoy it. I work in the medical field for the last 26 years, so I come home, that's my release, believe it or not. I like going out. I like doing chores and working in the barns or in the garden and stuff like that, so big change. A lot of times my mom will run into people in Lorain that know me, and she tells them that I'm a farmer, and they say, Judy? Really? So, yeah. It's fun. I enjoy it. I wish I could do it full-time. I wish I could quit my job and be home full-time and do all of this. Absolutely. That's my goal. Hopefully soon. Oh, you got your own one.
That's okay. I'm Bob Mattis from Mattis Winery. We are located in western Lorain County, about a mile away from these guys. I was a sheet metal worker for 25 years. Built steel buildings, and I did that for a living. In the meantime, I started tinkering with the wine production and growing grapes, and I read a book. I read a book on how to make wine, read a book on how to grow grapes, started putting in vines. Eventually it was like, you know, I could do this for a living. And it's a tough business because you're literally growing something in the ground and you're producing something right to the bottle and you're going right to the customer. Back then I had no clue of what it was like to swim through all the legalities. You have liquor permits and EPA and all the good guys that you got to follow a lot of rules. But I literally started making wine in the basement, entering home winemaking contests at a lot of the county fairs, and people liked it, and I thought it would be a great retirement thing. So I built a building thinking one day I'm going to start a little retirement winery and, you know, walk through the vineyard in the morning dew and, you know, check for, you know, proper grape, you know, production and all this. And it's not like that. In June of '06, I had the stack of permits on my dashboard of my truck for over a year. And it was a big envelope, and I was scared to death of them. So one day at lunchtime, I said, you know what, I'm going to fill them out. I sat down at lunch and I just filled out every permit they sent me. I sent them all out. They come back and they're like, well, you're a winery. And I'm like, okay, now what? And in the meantime, I was working full-time I opened in June of '06. In September of that same year, the company I worked for filed bankruptcy. So I'm like, wow, guess I'm a full-time winemaker now. Very scary, very thrown in your lap, in your face, you have to do this now. And I'm blessed. It's worked out. We have a nice place out there where people come and relax, and it's a lot of work. You know, you're setting up for events every day, and you know, it's like a getaway kind of place. So other than that, that's how I started. Nothing fancy.
Dr. Chester, what about you?
So Chet Bowling is my name. Black River Organics is our farm. And we're in Wellington. And we are the learning farm for the Lorain County Community College Sustainable Ag Program. So I don't know if any of you know that Lorain County Community College has a Sustainable Ag Program, but students come to me 1 day a week and spend basically the whole day there. Which is an interesting sort of aside to our business. We grow specialty crops, which are fruits and vegetables. We're USDA certified organic, and you know, we grow, this time of year, of course, we're growing lettuces are starting to end, the greens are starting to end, and the spring crops, and we're starting with our tomatoes and cucumbers and the sort of summer crops that you have. We have two movable high tunnels. You probably don't even know what a high tunnel is. So it's an unheated greenhouse structure. It's a really new system that's used to take advantage of the shoulder seasons. So I can start crops, for instance, we're finishing now our snow peas and sugar snap peas. We started them in February inside our high tunnel. And when it was warm enough for the peas to survive on their own, we rolled up one of the ends and moved the high tunnels. These are buildings that are 30 feet wide by 48 feet long and on rails. Moved the tunnel over and started our cucumbers in there. So we had cucumbers for sale in May this year. So locally grown cucumbers, Ohio grown cucumbers in Northeast Ohio in May, that's a pretty good thing. So we're doing it because we think that growing good, healthy food is an important thing today. What have I learned? You ask, what have I learned since I've been in business? I learned that it's a lot of hard work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no end to the work that is there to be done, that's for sure. But it's good, honest work. You know, you get your hands in the soil, and I can see this. You know, I've had some vets who have come back from Iraq and other places, and you know, these are guys who, you know, have seen some pretty awful things, but when they get their hands in that soil, there's just something magical that happens to them, and so I think that's a really good thing. And that probably is why I'm doing it, because when I get my hands in the soil, it makes a difference in my life. Yeah.
Well, I'm Nathan Jopik. Fairview Meadow Farm is my business. We're out in Wellington, actually not too far from Chet here. We are, if you know where the Lorain County Fairgrounds is, we're next door neighbors. I mean, we walk through the fence row and we're on the fairgrounds. So that's where we are. Kind of how I got started was my grandparents came down to Wellington from South Amherst when my dad was young. He was only a couple of years old. That was in the early 60s. And they had ended up having 9 kids in their family. So they farmed all together. You know, our farm is about 65 acres or so. So they farmed partly for a hobby. My grandpa loved farming, but then also partly to feed the family. You know, you have that many kids, that many mouths to feed. So they did that. My dad kind of farmed a little bit when he got out of school, but the farm after that kind of transitioned over to a local grain farmer, and for a lot of years was farmed conventionally in row crops. So I kind of developed an interest in agriculture as I grew up. I had some friends who were farmers, and so I was like, oh, you know, farming would be kind of neat. And because I saw what they were doing, you know, I'd go over to their farms and all that. And so we kind of looked at it, my parents and I were like, okay, well, what can we do? How can we make this work? Because the only thing I really knew necessarily was row crops. And I was like, well, that's not really going to be a good option, you know, because you have to have so much land and you have to have so much equipment to be able to make a go of that. So we had been doing strawberries for a long time. You know, my dad kind of did that. He loves strawberries, so we did that. And we were like, well, what about like a fruit farm kind of thing? And so we kind of explored that option a little bit, but then about that same time, and this is probably when I was in my teens or so, maybe mid-teens, my mom kind of started to change our diet. Like as far as Americans went, we probably ate, I would consider healthy, but she kind of changed us to more of like an organic type system, and in doing so we discovered grass-fed meats, which is what we do primarily. That's our main business, is grass-fed meat. We do very similar to the dough stalls, beef, pork, lamb, chicken, eggs, turkey, all that stuff. We also still do the strawberries, a little bit of produce, maple syrup, honey, all that kind of stuff. So she started to change our diet, and we got to looking into this, and then that's when we discovered a farm called Polyface Inc. with Joel Salatin. He's now internationally known, travels all over the world speaking, and he was doing the grass-fed thing. And so we're like, oh, you know, that's really neat. So I actually wrote him a letter. This is when I was in high school. I wrote him a letter and said, hey, you know, I'd love to come down and, you know, even spend a week or, you know, some time down there to see what you do, kind of learn some about it. And he wrote back and he said, well, we like a year-long commitment, and we actually have an opening in the fall of 2004, which I was graduating in spring of 2004, and in January of 2005, and I was like, well, hey, that's great. So I said I was interested in the fall of 2004. We went down, kind of checked it out, and they were checking me out to see how we'd fit. And so after I graduated that fall, I went down and spent a year down there learning the craft, the art of grass-fed farming, and I came back and we've been doing it since, building the farm. I still work full-time off the farm as we're building. It's a slow process. We're doing it organically, so to speak. I mean, we do grass-fed meat and non-GMO kind of stuff, so it sounds kind of funny to say we're doing it organically, but we're trying to do it as low debt as we can. So it's a slow process to build up the market. You know, that's one of the biggest things and the toughest things of starting out with it. With the local farming is building that market. You know, you're starting with nothing, and these guys know that. You're starting with nothing, so you have to build up to that point where you could actually create a livable salary. You know, we're working there, and hopefully one day, Lord willing, we'll be there. So that's kind of how we got started. As far as what I've learned, it's kind of what haven't I learned, you know. As far as farming goes, you know, I've been blessed. I worked at a farm when I was in high school, so I learned a lot of dairy farm. I learned a lot that way, and of course, being down in Virginia, learned some there. But and then I'm actually a graduate of LC. So it's kind of neat to be here, exciting to be here. So I learned, you know, business and accounting there, but which has helped with the business, no doubt. But honestly, doing it and being there on the farm, dealing with the animals, dealing with the customers, dealing with the books, I've learned way more than anything that I've ever learned on anywhere I've worked or anything that I've done in school. Those are all good basics that get you started, but to actually learn it, doing it is by far the best way.
Hi, I'm Brian Turner. I'm co-owner of Our Little World Alpacas in Grafton Township. My wife Joy and I have been in the alpaca business since 2006. We have a 6-acre farm, and we both right now have full-time jobs, and we were never farmers before we got into this business. We actually found out about alpacas from some friends of ours, and we also, with our sports car club, we went to a tour, and we were taken on a tour of 3 alpaca farms, and they told us their story. And then we went to an open house in Vermilion, and that's when we started. We bought 2 pregnant females and boarded them at a farm in Vermilion. After a few years, we decided that we wanted to go on our own, so we bought the property in Grafton and set up our farm, and by that time we had 10 alpacas. Our product is we raise alpacas and we grow their fiber and harvest their fiber to make clothing products like hats and gloves and scarves and things, because alpaca is warmer than wool and it's hypoallergenic. It doesn't itch like wool does. And one of the things we like about the business, sort of like what Chet mentioned here, was that when we came up with the name Our Little World Alpacas, because having full-time jobs on Friday, and before we had the farm, on Fridays when we would come home from work, we would say, okay, now this is our little world. Nobody can tell us what to do. This is what we're doing. We're not working for anybody like we are during the week. So when we got the farm and decided to come up with the name of the business, we just thought it would be Our Little World Alpacas, because it's something that's we do, and we do it together. And even though we have full-time jobs and kind of stressful jobs, I'm a mechanical engineer, and my wife used to work in theater, and she now works in a business office for a staffing company. Kind of stressful jobs, but you come home at night, you think, oh no, I have to take care of that barn now and all those animals, but the minute you walk into that barn and all the alpacas are looking at you and humming and smiling and everything, it just takes the whole world off your shoulders, and you're just somewhere else. And as far as what we've learned is, being in this business, there's not a lot of known about alpacas, except for some recent research through like Ohio State University and some people who have done their own research. And you basically have to become your own veterinarian to save a lot of money. And so we have done a lot of research on veterinary practices, what to look for with the animals, and try to avoid veterinary costs as much as possible. We shear the animals once a year. We take their fiber, we convert it into yarn products, felt, and we sell at our store on our property. We do farm markets, and we do a lot of marketing on the internet. The alpaca industry is a very internet-based business, and we do a lot of business with people all over the country, and we've actually bought alpacas and sold alpacas to people in California and Washington and East Coast. We have an alpaca that's going to Texas this weekend. We do a lot of open houses at our farm. We try to get people to come to our farm so that they can see what's going on. We try to educate people. And once you see the alpacas and you're with them and by them, it's hard not to love them.
One question I have for all of you, and perhaps we can just go down the line again, I don't know if you want to go in a different direction, but can you please explain a little bit about the startup funding that you had, your supply chains, how do you actually get your products to market, and what kind of relationships you've established with different vendors to do that?
First?
Yes.
For us, as far as startup, if you come to our farm right now, you're not going to see fields of beans and corn and silos and combines and 25-row planters and all that kind of stuff. When we started the business, we were concerned about what our kids were eating, like I said. But we also wanted to be a business that we could be profitable with relatively quickly. So we didn't want to get into all the crop farming. So basically, we bought some property and we put up some barns and we filled it with animals. I mean, that's pretty simple. You can build a pretty nice pole barn for $5,000-6,000.
When you have a husband that knows how to build that. Remember that, it does cost,
Yeah.
more if you have to pay for somebody to build it.
So, but we build a few. I build all the barns on my property.
And you partner with no outside funding to do this?
No, we do our own funding. I mean, it started with our paychecks, basically, is what it started with, up until probably when he left Invacare, and then we had our webpage built. That's when our sales picked up, because now people know where to find us. And, if you Google Lorain County, local beef, our name will pop up. So that's when we started being able to open a business checking and work out of that, as opposed to our personal paychecks and paying the mortgage and doing that kind of stuff. That's where our startup money came from.
Is all of your sales then through the website, or
No.
how else do you market?
We also do farm tours. We are on, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Bag Lady Tour or the Country Farm Tour in the fall. They do a spring and a fall tour that we just joined a year ago. And they do two tours a year, one in April, which we just got done doing, and then one in the fall, in October. As the gentleman said down there, we want to bring people to our farm so we can educate. If they want to see what the finished product is going to look like, it's there. They can see it as a baby, because we always have calves. Our supply chain that way comes from local farmers. We do not buy out of state. We keep everything within, the one guy's down in Dalton, Ohio, is where we get our baby calves from, they're Herefords. And then he's got a friend he used to work with at Invacare, also raises, so we buy from him around the corner. And then our pigs come from Ziegler, Mr. Ziegler down on Jones Road in Wellington. These guys might know him. We get all of our baby piglets from him, and then we get our chicks from, Myers Hatchery and Polk. So we try to just keep everything, local as far as our suppliers go. So, because you got to be careful if you go to auctions, you have no idea where those animals are coming from.
It seems like you have quite a tight network amongst each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
Startup funding?
How did you actually,
Wow.
how did you actually make the leap then from receiving a paycheck from an outside source to actually start?
I lost the company closed. It was a very scary transition. No health insurance, no paychecks coming in, and you got this winery that's smaller than this room, and you go, well, I guess we got to sell. And again, we build all our own buildings, and I've never really hired anybody to do anything. You just, it's a labor of love. Whatever you guys want to do in the agricultural business, you better love it, because man, it's tough. You get up in the morning and you're praying for rain, and everybody got it but you. And you know, the funding and financing, I went to the bank one time and they asked to see a business plan, and I'm like, well, I want to grow grapes and make wine. I already got a winery. You know, there's so much that I learned about running a business. It's incredible. You know, you have, for me, every entity of the government sells you a permit, and you have to have these things. And basically, I just ask, well, what do I got to do? I have a couple local guys, other wineries that I've worked with that, like I get my bottles from Lee Klingshirn. He helped me out immensely in the beginning. And to this day, we still have a good working relationship. Ohio State University was a great asset for me. They have a viticulture program which means grape growing. Knew nothing about growing grapes. I planted them. They're going to grow, you know, and everybody laughed at me. They're like, well, dude, you know what you're doing? And I'm like, I'm planting grapes. I'm going to make wine. Ohio State University, they sent up a couple guys, and they sat down with me and explained a lot of that stuff. There is a lot of outreach programs for whatever entity you want to get into. You just have to research it. For us, our biggest marketing thing would be social media. We got over 100,000 likes on our Facebook stuff, and I don't know. I used to do a lot of it, but now I don't. It's a lot of, you know, you could spend all day on the computer blurbing about what you're going to have the weekend. Every weekend we have different entertainment, and you know, people come out to cook food for us, and the social media really pulled us through. And that's, you know, Facebook was free advertising. Other than that, I started another business with more of a experience now. Knowing what I know now, we started growing grain for the brewing industry. Barley, beers made out of barley. We started growing barley, Ohio grown. We malt it, we convert it into malt, and we're working with a couple local breweries. Again, you don't have a huge sum of money to throw at a project. You just do it yourself and figure it out and research it and get out there and talk to people about it. And that's how you do it. So that's it, I guess.
You were telling me about some of your supply chain that you established, how to get your produce to market.
Yeah, so we actually have 4 channels, if you think of it that way. We have 2 farmers markets that we go to. We go to the Oberlin Farmers Market. That's one of the reasons we picked this particular farm, was because it was close to Oberlin, because we wanted to be certified organic, and we knew that the customers in Oberlin would be people who would care more about that issue. I mean, there are some people who don't care if their food is organic or not. So we knew there would be a customer base there because of that. And this year we've also started at the Frostville Farmers Market. Our farm is set up as a cooperative, a worker-owner cooperative, which means instead of one farmer and a bunch of lowly paid workers, the people who work at the farm own a share of the farm, an equal share. And so we, at the end of the year, you know, we take the revenue, subtract the expenses, what's left is a profit, and we divide it up amongst the people who work at the farm. So one of our members now in the co-op, they're called members, one of our members said, let's start at the Frostville Farmers Market. So she's at the Frostville Farmers Market on Saturday, while I'm at the Oberlin Farmers Market on Saturday morning. In addition, we started, I think I handed these out to everybody, this last year we joined with 9 other farms just in the spirit of cooperation. We think that cooperation is the biggest strategic advantage any business can have. And so we've joined with 9 other farms and created this online farmers market. So customers can go online anytime, starting on Friday at 1 o'clock. They can order through Tuesday at midnight, and then we deliver to a number of places around Lorain County. And we're always open to new places. So if you have a business that you want to have produce, it's not just produce. We have meats, eggs, we have soaps and lotions, we have honey, we have maple syrup, we have fruits, and 2 certified organic specialty crop farms are part of that too. And cheese, we also have cheese as well. Let's see, I think that's all there is. So we sell through that, and it's just another way of getting the product out. We believe that the way to get local food into people's hands is to make it more convenient. Not everybody can show up at the farmers market on Saturday morning or Wednesday night or whenever it is. Kids are playing sports and all those kinds of things, so this makes it very easy for people to go online, order products that they want, and then it comes right to their workplace, basically. And then we've also started this year, there's a new all-organic food store, Allison's Superfoods in Strongsville, and so we're selling to them as well because they just deal in organics. So that's another way that we've gotten product to market. But the interesting thing, going back about, cash to start up with and all that kind of stuff, one of the good things about farming produce is the barrier entry is pretty low. I mean, go into any place that sells seeds and you can buy a packet of tomato seeds for $1.50 or $2.50. You can put them in the ground and you can grow hundreds of dollars worth of tomatoes if you're good at growing stuff. So the barrier to entry is pretty low in that way. Not that growing tomatoes is all that easy, but and when we first started out, our advertising was Craigslist. We put our products on Craigslist and people started coming. We also have 5 acres of pick your own blueberries, so people started coming on, and it's really interesting because we had customers who came and really liked the berries, and then they started doing the social media stuff for us. They started telling their friends,
Right.
On Facebook and so forth. Went to this, they'd come out, they'd take pictures of their kids picking berries and
Yep.
having a nice time and all that kind of stuff, and so some of that feeds on itself a little bit. But we do have a Facebook page, we do have a website page, and we are constantly trying to blog and say what we're doing on the farm, let people know, the same as everybody else here. The real answer to this is people have to feel like they have some connection to you. The USDA started a program called Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, and that's all about having that personal relationship. So that if you go to Mattis, the guy that's actually making the wine. It's not
Right.
from some off-the-shelf grocery store sort of thing. So we did have a grant for our 2 high tunnels. They didn't pay for both of the tunnels, but it paid for a portion of the tunnels. So there are sometimes grants that can help you get started. But we are, the same as sounds like most other people here, doing this on the slow money, if you know the slow money movement. We are on that track here. Let's not run up a big, mortgage or something like that. We've got a little money, let's use that to build on the business, and as more money comes in, we'll just keep building on the business and we'll be a good local business.
All right, as far as startup money, what's startup money? It's same as a lot of these guys. It basically, it kind of started out, I was working, I had my paychecks, and I would go off of that. It kind of started buying some of this stuff as we were beginning, and that was all right. I mean, we went for a couple years that way, and then I ended up one year getting a few $1,000s. I think there was something going on with the taxes or whatever, and I had that few $1,000s, and I put that into the bank. I started a business account. I put that into the bank, and we've just been going ever since. I mean, thankfully, praise the Lord, we've had very little, I guess you would say, outside money. Since that time, actually, I have put, that was probably, I would guess, maybe 10, 12 years ago or so that we did that. And I would say probably I have put very, very little of my own money into the farm since then. It's just built off of our sales and growth we've had. In order to grow and expand some, particularly with the cattle, buying cattle is expensive. We've had some family loans for that small, I think the biggest one was maybe like $7,000 or $8,000, which we've paid back. But so that was really, as far as funding goes, that's it. It's basically been just turning the profits over in the business. And kind of my philosophy for it has been, I'm working full-time right now, and my goal is to farm full-time. And so I kind of have the goal in mind that I want to do what I can now while I'm drawing an income to be able to, at the day when we decide, okay, we're going to quit working and do this full time, I'll have built the barns, I'll have established all of our equipment and everything that we need. I'll have all that. So basically, I'll just have to say, okay, I'm ready to go. Because the thing that's hard about it is, same as a lot of these guys, as far as building and everything goes, we do a lot of that ourselves. I mean, we've had very little done for us from off the farm, so we save a lot of money that way. But to build anything or to buy things costs a lot of money. So I don't want to have to worry about, okay, well, I gotta build a barn for the cattle. So how am I going to afford to do that and feed my family? I guess we're lucky in the sense that we grow food, so I don't have to worry about that necessarily. But pay my bills, I guess I should say. How am I going to pay my bills and build this barn at the same time? So that's kind of my goal, is that once we get to that point where we say, okay, we're ready to flip the switch, then I can just go. Like I said, very low debt, and kind of with that goal in mind that we want to just be able to run with it.
How do you get your products to market?
The big thing we do is a lot of bulk meat, freezer meat. People will buy like halves of beef or pork, that kind of thing. We're starting to get a lot more. Our biggest area for demand is coming from the retail, so we're moving into that, starting to get more into that, getting everything squared away, working on getting a store on our farm, working through all the issues with that, and it's just a slow process for us. Everything that we do, and purposely so, is through our own farm. At this point, I've thought about. There are so many different things you can do as far as channels where you can sell your products. And I've thought about, okay, well, there's stuff like restaurants you can do farmers markets, you can do, get into selling to retail stores, like Chet does a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's all fine, that's all great. But for us right now, I guess at the point of life where I'm at with what we're doing, we basically have our farm, and that's what we do. All of our customers are our own that we've developed. We've built a lot. Really, our biggest growth has come from word of mouth. Kind of once we got started, we started out really, probably the thing that really got us off the ground is we were part of a food co-op where we'd order. The company sells everything. You could buy your cereal, your soap, your whatever you want, and then they would deliver it once a month. So there was this group, and it was kind of organically minded, and so there was a group of people that were doing that and that we were part of, and a lot of those people were interested in what we were doing. So they started buying our stuff, and then from there, it really built on word of mouth. And one big thing, one blessing for me is because of my experience down at Polyface, I've gotten a little bit of a, I suppose you could say, unfair boost from that, in that, Joel, he's been featured in in books, documentaries, things like that. So people find out about him, and from there they find out about me. So that's been nice. That's been a big blessing there. But it's just a constant thing of working on the marketing. Finding the new customers to buy the stuff. Like I said, everything right now, and it will probably very well change in the future. But everything we do right now is just through our own farm. Building our own sort of organic, you could say, base of customers.
Yeah, we were, in the beginning, we self-funded the business, buying the first couple or few alpacas, and then with sales of the babies that we had. And also we did take out, after we moved to our farm, and we did take out a home equity loan to buy a small tractor, and we had to add on to our barn, the barn that was actually on the property at the time when we bought it. We had to add on to it because somebody had bought some alpacas and wanted a place to board them. We weren't really planning on boarding alpacas at first, but she was kind of desperate, so we opened up our farm to 10 of her animals, and we started boarding alpacas. Right now, with the sales of alpacas, the products, the boarding, and herd sire services, for the last 5 years, the farm has been self-sustaining. We don't use any of our own income now to fund the farm. We've gotten farm tax benefits because alpacas are considered livestock, and so we are in a pretty good position to keep getting bigger and more profitable as it goes. As far as advertising, we do a lot of marketing. We are at the Frostville Farm Market. Once a month we go to the Frostville Market, and we are kind of a draw there. A lot of people will come to the market because they know the alpacas are going to be there, because we actually bring alpacas to the market and people want to see them. We are at the Oberlin Farm Market once a month. We also do marketing and advertising on alpaca-specific websites like Alpaca Nation, Open Herd. We do a lot of Facebook marketing. I blog probably every day on our site with pictures from our farm. We are members of the Farm Bureau and the Lorain County Visitors Bureau. Last year we were on the Farm Bureau tour of Lorain County, and we had over 500 people come to our farm. It was amazing. And we also do alpaca shows. We're members of the Alpaca Owners Association, and they put on shows. They're sort of like dog shows. You take your alpacas, you show them, they're judged. We win ribbons and banners, and winning in the show ring definitely helps your business, as you know that your alpacas are quality, and people want to seek you out for your herd sires or to buy your alpacas so that they can show them. And we do a lot of mentoring. We have 4 boarders at our farm that actually do business from our farm, and we mentor them. And we've had a couple that have actually started at our farm, started their own farm, and moved on with the expertise that they've learned. We have several open houses during the year. We have the open house on this Saturday, actually, is our spring open house. We've had it now for going on 7 years. And we also do an open house called Christmas in the Alpaca Barn. We do it 2 weekends in a row after Thanksgiving. The Alpaca Owners Association has a thing called National Alpaca Farm Days. It's 2 days in September where all the alpaca farms in the country are open, or whoever wants to open their farm. It's nationally advertised, and we have an open house then too. We just try to get people to come to our farm and experience the alpacas.
My final question is, we have Ohio weather. Everybody knows what that means. We can start laughing. How do you maintain your business when it's a cyclical business and it's freezing outside and you still have to produce wine if you don't have grapes necessarily growing or crops growing or animals who are necessarily able to get out in 3 feet of snow and graze? How do you maintain your business during those lean times?
For us, we don't have that problem. Our animals are raised in barns. It is a confinement system. We feed what's called a total mixed ration, which is there's hay, they're available for the animal all day, and there's also a grain-based feed that's available for the animals all day. We really don't have that problem. We buy the calves or the baby piglets, and we put them in the system, and we feed them through, and we just sell them that way. I mean, so we don't have much problem with the weather.
So it doesn't affect your business?
No.
Weather definitely affects us. The winery, rain days are awesome because nobody's home mowing lawn. They all want to go get a glass of wine. But grapes like dry weather. Less water in the fruit makes it more sugar in the fruit. But the rest of our field crops, like this rain right here, it went right around us. We haven't had rain in probably 3 weeks. So, I don't know, the weather, you watch it every day and it gets on you and you're like, oh, we could use some rain. But then I go out to the vineyard and I'm like, they don't need no rain. You know, so it's like one hand washes the other. I'm trying to let my sons understand that because they're more of a grain farmer and they're doing the barley thing. And they get upset when there's no rain, and which most farmers do. But I tell them we're not in control of that. You know, somebody else is in control, and just have faith. It'll all work out when, you know, when it does rain, everybody's going to come to the winery, or when it doesn't rain, it's the grapes are doing good, or, you know, I guess I look at it like that because for years it's just like with bills also. Oh man, insurance is due, this is due, this is due, this is due. And then the next thing you know, you have a great weekend and you go, whew. So I guess, yeah, it's all, one hand washes the other, and somebody else is in control, not me.
And how's winter weather affect your business?
Yeah, no, so specialty crops require 1 inch of rain a week to thrive. We haven't had rain in 3 weeks. Right. So we use micro irrigation, drip. So that's a good way to conserve water. We have an irrigation pond, and all the crops are irrigated, except for our blueberries, which really need irrigation. So someday we're going to invest in that, and we'll have irrigation there. The interesting comparison here is once the wine is made, it's shelf stable.
Right.
Once a cucumber is grown,
Right. You got to eat it.
you know, that's the
Right.
difference. So,
Right.
and we don't, it requires all kinds of licenses to process food. So we don't process any of our food. The only thing that we have that's shelf stable is our honey. But what we do, because people do want fresh food as often as they can get it, I think, we use these movable high tunnels, and we do all kinds of things to make sure that we can have fresh greens at the markets in December. We're still selling plenty of fresh food in December. The only month that we don't, and this is by design, is we shut our farm down for the month of January. It's more about the amount of light that's available to grow the crop as it is the temperature. Because there are crops that I could grow in those high tunnels in January, but there's, by temperature, there's just not enough light there. And we're trying to be a zero carbon farm, so we're not going to install lights in there. We really started up again in February. That's when we start ramping up production again, and we had stuff to sell in March. So, you know, that's 2 months out of the year that we can't sell stuff in Northeast Ohio. That's okay. That's not doing too bad.
Right.
So that's what we do.
Good.
For us, weather does, but it doesn't affect us. Our business, what we do is seasonal because we are pasture-based. Our animals are out on pasture. Our chickens, our cattle, sheep, all that stuff, they're out on pasture. So wintertime around here is not so good, but thankfully the good Lord made it so the grass grows heavily in the springtime and we can make hay. You know, we just got done doing some of that on Monday. We made some hay and we have more to make yet. So we make the hay so we can feed the animals during the winter time. Like the meat chickens that we do, they're a summertime crop. You know, basically from June until October, beginning of November is it. You know, that's kind of the stretch that you can have the chickens out there in the field. Once the weather hits, you're done. And our customers know that. They appreciate that. They understand that that's the way that the way we raise our animals. That's how it has to be done. As we're starting to get into more of the retail stuff, you know, we're gonna have to work on putting in a, you know, like a walk-in freezer and stuff like that, so we can store that stuff during the winter time. Thankfully, those stuff like the beef and even the eggs and stuff that we sell, that's pretty insulated from the seasonality in terms of when we can have stuff available. The meat chickens and turkeys and things like that are really the biggest things. And some of the crops we do, like strawberries, you know, that's a seasonal thing. Those are available in June. We do a little bit of produce, not nearly like what Chet does, but that's kind of a seasonal thing. Weather, you know, we need the rain too. We're in the same boat as these guys. We need the rain because we're kind of out in the same area as them. So we're you know, looking for and praying for the rain. But one area that I've really focused on is management in terms of our pastures. Because we rely so heavily on our pastures, both for growing season and wintertime feed, you know, I mentioned the hay that we have to make to feed the animals in the wintertime. We have to make sure that we do what we can to protect the pasture. So really, during the wintertime, when it's frozen, the animals could get out, but they're in the barn because we're working on building compost at that time. We're building up manure to create compost. But like in the spring, early spring, even though the grass is growing and the snow has gone away, the pasture is way too wet to put the animals out on. So we have to wait until it's dry enough, which is usually around the end of April, middle to end of April. You know, so from somewhere in December to middle of April, we'll have the cattle in the barn because it's just not good to have them out there on the pasture. This spring, we had 1 or 2 paddocks out of our field. We do rotational grazing, so every day we'll give them a little section of the pasture. We did have 1 or 2 paddocks that got beat up pretty bad because of the rain. I mean, we got just dumped on here a few weeks ago. You know, a lot of rain in a matter of a couple days, and
That missed us.
you know, so that was one of those things that you get. You know, you have all those head of cattle out there. You know, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 plus pound animals. You know, they're tromping that up. So you really have to be careful on how you do that. It just takes a lot of thought, you know, to put into it. Okay, if this happens, what am I going to do? What's my contingency plan? Okay, it's getting dry. What am I going to do? You know, you look at that, and thankfully we have a lot of resiliency built into our system because the big thing is work with nature, not against it.
Right.
You're never, ever, ever going to beat nature. If you're doing something like we are, you're never, ever, ever going to beat nature. The best you can do is work with it. You know, just kind of roll with the punches, so to speak. You say, okay, this is what is dealt out to me. You know, you have faith that that you're going to get the weather you need, but you deal with it. You say, okay, this is the weather we have. This is how I'm going to handle it.
Brian, does weather affect the Alpacas?
It affects our sales, because our products that we make from alpaca fiber are primarily cold weather products. Our best sales are between October and April. Is when we have our highest sales. In the summertime, we go to the farm market. We still go to farm markets and do a lot of marketing just to get people to come to our open houses and that. As far as the animals, we shear them in the second week of May so that they're not overheating in the summertime. And then by that time, they're able to go out onto pasture, May, June. And we have several pastures we rotate. We've been overseeding and fertilizing. We do buy hay at this time. We don't have enough property to grow our own hay. But they eat hay and a grain supplement. And in the wintertime, obviously there's no pasture, so they're kept in a dry lot area and in the barn, an open barn, and they eat hay all winter. And they grow their fiber. So in the wintertime, they get 5-6 inches of fiber, and so they stay warm all through the winter. The products themselves are, like I said, they're kind of cold weather products. So we also do the Frostville market in North Olmsted. We do the winter market. They have an indoor market inside their barn. And we've been pretty good, had pretty good sales there, especially the couple weeks before and maybe a month after Christmas, because we do have a lot of gift type products. We have teddy bears and gloves and things that people like to give as gifts for Christmas. So we do a lot of sales at the Frostville market and at our store just prior to Christmas. And a little bit after Christmas, because sometimes people celebrate Christmas and the holidays after Christmas, and they're still buying gifts for their family and everything. So, but alpacas are very environmentally friendly on our pastures because they have padded feet. So all we have to do is basically move them off the pasture and let it grow back a little bit if it rains. They don't beat it down to where we have to like replant it. So it's that makes it nice, so that because we don't have to do a lot of pasture management.